I'm your host, Riem Zin Labidin, and you are listening to TechTag Podcast. Today, our guest is Flavio Brasil. He's a principal software engineer. He maintains and contributes in different open source projects, and he's a speaker in tech conferences. I'm very excited to talk to him. Let's meet with him and learn more about his journey. Hello, Flavio. Welcome to TechTech Podcast. I'm very happy and honored to have you here.
Hi, Rian. Thank you so much for inviting me. I have a lot of admiration for your work and especially the work on the early days of SEO and the innovations it brought. It's really nice to be talking to you today.
Thank you. I'm very happy to get the chance to talk to you also, meeting in the conferences and see your great work in the community. And I'm excited to learn more about your journey. But first, for those who don't know you, could you introduce yourself and tell something about, like, fun facts about yourself?
Sure. So I'm a software engineer. I'm originally from Brazil. I live in the US these days. And an interesting fact about me, I used to play the saxophone at Brazilian soul bands when I was like a teenager or even my early days in Brazil. I also have parrots. I'm a bird person. I like parrots and raising them and etc. So a couple interesting facts. I've been working with different technologies throughout my career. So I've been working professionally as a software developer for about 20 years, I would say. But since my early days, like as an adolescent, I always was passionate about programming and like trying to understand new things.
How you got interested into programming in the very beginning? How did you get the inspiration to start?
So I would say even as a young child, technology in general was really interesting to me. I didn't have access to computers for a long time. So initially, I think when I was around 11 or 10, I had a friend that had a computer. I would go to his house like to play, but it was just my excuse to see a computer, to be honest. And it was like so fascinating, like seeing the kind of things that could be in that like small screen, something that was just like the best thing in my life, to be honest, at the time. And eventually my parents bought a computer. It was like like those compact computers, like compared to today's technology, it was very limited. I would just play basically with that and try to understand like how things worked, how I could do different things with the computer. It was just like a big passion for me. And I always had also encouragement from my parents, right? So eventually I started I was like maybe around 15, I think at the time. I was already like playing with computers for a while. And my father started encouraging me to learn things and after coding and etc. And he had a friend that was a software developer. And he asked his friend to start teaching me coding, right? So it was a really amazing opportunity because the guy was very funny. So he would like explain things in a way that was very engaging to me. And he was doing COBOL at the time. So my first language was COBOL. And something that was very interesting and it stayed with me is even to today, like something that he said, he would say like software coding, it's actually very simple. It's people that make it complicated. I think it's a simplification, right? But at the same time, it's something that I feel it's with me even today, right? I like to try to build solutions that allow people to develop software in a way that's easy, in a way that's convenient. So basically giving access to the power of developing software to more people, because it's something that can be really life-changing. Like people can like build things and have careers and etc. in a way that is a really interesting possibility for people, right? So yeah, and then from there, I did like a technical course together with high school in Brazil. We had like these specializations. And I started studying programming with that. And again, my parents encouraging me, like my mother was working for a real estate company. And they had like, at the time in Brazil, small companies wouldn't really have like software systems to support them. This was everything paper, right? And then she asked me like, maybe you can build something for us and etc. And I built it, like made some money, not much money, but as a adolescence was a lot of money for me, right? So the first
Yeah,
time I got some money. Yeah, and that was about like 15 or 16. And since then I've been coding, like it's really my passion, I would say.
that's really inspiring. And later, like, how was your education path, or have you like directly started working?
So with the technical course with high school, I started working a bit. So I had this project with my mother's company.
Mhm.
It went well, like the system works and helps the company. After that, I went to college. And to be honest, like I've never been a good student in general. I had trouble at school, even from an early age. I had even trouble like to start reading and writing at an early age. And school was always tough to me. Staying like inside the class and listening and like the patient was something challenging for me. But again, with encouragement from my parents and etc., I went to college. It was a bit challenging because in Brazil we have the best colleges. They are actually public and free, but they
Mhm.
are really hard to get into, right? So there's like a test, etc. And the college I got in was actually in another city. So I had to go to another place far from my family, far from my girlfriend that is my wife today. So it was a bit challenging to go through that, but and even like the college itself, like classes and etc. I always have had trouble with that, but I made it through and then finished the college after a few years. Yeah, and that was my basically my study in terms of programming.
When you started applying for different jobs, how did you start? Like, did you look for the offers in the internet, or have you continued with your first opportunity at the company?
So the first opportunities I had were actually internships as parts of the technical course in high school and then college. And as the initial internship after the high school was an interesting, I was basically an IT guy in a small office. And I would like give support to people to use computers, trouble they would have with network or the computer itself. I would help that do just a little bit of coding. And it was an interesting opportunity because my first time with like having contact with a corporate environment.
Mhm.
So seeing like the issues that these kind of environments have and like the politics and etc. was like an interesting study for me, like to observe people, see why they were behaving, the way they were the behaving, or the incentives. The owner of the company was kind of like an old style manager, like really rude, and people were afraid of him. So people, how
Mhm.
people reacted to that was interesting to see as well. I also in this job I had like my first incident with IT. So my boss at the time, he said, "Okay, we have these three computers. We have to format these computers." I sent like an announcement saying, "Okay, I'm going to format the computers by the end of the week. Please let me know if there's anything." At the time, there wasn't like cloud or synchronization or backups. Like people would just work on things on their computer, and if they lost it, it was just lost, right? And
Yeah.
by the end of the week, I formatted the computers. And one person, he was a French guy working in Brazil, and he came back the next week and he saw the computer formatted, and he had 1 year of work in that computer.
Wow.
It was like a very stressful situation because the guy was like,
Yeah.
he lost a lot with that, right? So, and he was like so upset, like I thought even he was going to hit me at some point. But at the same time, I think it was an interesting learning because I saw how software and how systems can be something really central to people's lives, right? So being careful with what you do, being careful with how you do things to make sure like your clients, people that you are working with have a good experience and don't lose what they need for their work is something that was an interesting lesson from that. And then later after college, I did an internship and I worked for many years in Brazil for telecommunication businesses.
Mhm.
So basically building systems for billing users, for managing users, integrations, all aspects related to telecommunications. And that was my first internship at a company that was a Portuguese company in Brazil initially, and then I went to another one. So for many years, I was working in that area of CRM and billing for telecommunications.
Cool. And when you were in that environment, how did you deal with the challenges? How did you manage to keep your motivation?
Well, working in the telecommunication business, I initially had this Portuguese company I was working at, and then I joined another company that was developing also the same kind of systems, but they were using Smalltalk as the
Mhm.
language. And it was a really interesting opportunity because Smalltalk wasn't really like a mainstream language, so there were no solutions for persistence, for testing. So they built many of those solutions. So it was interesting to see like how it was kind of like a small branch of how software engineering could become, right? So it forked as like its own thing with persistence and like unit tests. And I learned a lot from that, especially Smalltalk. I still miss the development environments from Smalltalk because it's very convenient. Yeah, it was an interesting opportunity. But in Brazil at the time, there was no wide career path, right? So there was like no way of you to grow as a software engineer, just like in the technical side. As you grow, you would become a team manager, like a bigger team manager, a project manager. And I followed that path and I became a manager at the
Mhm.
end for a large project at the company. It was really difficult because first, I really love coding, and I wasn't doing coding at the time, so it was like something missing in my life at that point.
Mhm.
And I was dealing with a project that was really problematic. Like the client was like trying to find our company, like apply fines and etc. And like there was lots of like conflicts and like renegotiation of contracts and these kind of things. And at that point, it was really hard for me because I saw that that wasn't the path I wanted to follow. Something I liked was to help people to grow, like or like managing people and helping and etc. It was something that I enjoyed, but I started doing less and less of that. My work day to day was basically politics, fully
Mhm.
politics. I think something that helps me is trying to separate and see things from a different perspective, right? So sometimes you can have someone that is rude to you or has like some issues or some conflicts. I try to see things from different perspectives and how people see things, right? So what are their motives, what they are looking for, trying to understand and empathize with how they are acting and having trouble and etc. I think that helps a lot. I can say it wasn't a nice experience being a manager for me, but at least I learned a lot, especially regarding like how to work with people, solve like different difficult projects or problems. So I would say like the main thing I learned was like trying to see things from people's perspectives, trying to understand how they think, why they think the way they are, right?
It seems like it helped to develop the soft skills, including this the empathy. It's very
Yeah.
difficult, like to be able to see others' perspective, especially under pressure. Yeah, it's really good. And then, did you go back to software development?
So the way that my career was going in Brazil, going back to software development would be a significant step back into career-wise.
Hmm.
So that wasn't really much of an option for me at the time. But then I couldn't work on coding at work. I started doing coding in my free time, and that was when I
Mm.
started doing open source in Scala. I learned Scala at the time. I was like really fascinated by the language because it had some of the characteristics of Smalltalk I liked, like being powerful, but at the same time not too complex. So it was like a really interesting way of me to continue coding. And because of that, I started like publishing projects and etc. And eventually I got an invitation to do an interview to work in Berlin.
Hmm.
And I went to do like the interview and etc. And even though at the time it was a significant step back in terms of like how much I was going to earn or like the position, but the opportunity to learn from a different environments, like building different kinds of systems, and especially the company was a kind of like a larger scale system. I was working in Berlin for SoundCloud. SoundCloud at the time was growing like crazy, like the platform was growing very quickly. So I decided to go to Berlin to start working there. Yeah, and then I started coding again in Berlin at SoundCloud.
Many people who are into programming and have different skills, they study different things. They can be confused in the beginning. What should they start with as a job? Maybe it will work for them, programming, or maybe product management or something. How did you get this decision?
So I think for me, initially with the internship, first jobs I applied and etc. But a lot of my career later was defined by open source. So, for example, when I went to Berlin, it was because of my open source work, and then to the US, also open source. So I would say it's not really a traditional way of building a career. It's more like because open source became my hobby, right? And then my hobby influenced how the opportunities I used to have. But when I talk to people starting, I would say if you are learning something that you are interested about helps a lot, right? So trying to find like areas that seem interesting to you, or areas that you have something like that makes you wonder, or things that you want to really understand and learn. I think that's like the secret sauce for really being successful. So trying to find something that you are interested about to dig deeper and go like after and like understanding all the complexities, the issues, and etc. I think that's a good path for starting in a career. Another path is maybe open source, but I think that's not for everyone, right? It's just that my hobby became coding and open source. I don't think that's true for many people, right?
You mentioned a good point about like being curious to learn more helps you to be passionate about something, and you develop more skills into programming or into anything that you are interested about.
I think also maybe if you are starting, like trying to find good references, people that can help with mentorship or teaching, or even just like talking about directions, things you can explore. I think that helps a lot. And I've done a lot of that throughout my career, trying to help people to understand where they can invest time or learn, or like look for references and etc. I think that's something that helps a lot, trying to find people that can help you and give you guidance as well.
And when you started working on open source projects, did you have like a mentor, or you give it a try by yourself and everything worked smoothly? How was it?
As open source, it was really, even today, it was more of a solo thing, because I do that as a hobby. So I have my regular job, always had, and etc. But I basically have like my free time. I do some coding as well, right? So it's more like myself, like trying to build things. And the way I approach open source, because it's something that has no expectations, there is no one paying me to do something or reach something, right? So I have a lot of what I like about it's having the freedom to just like explore whatever I want, right? So I've used like really like different kinds of solutions and lots of different approaches. I like to find ways of innovating on things. So that's, I would say, the main thing for open source.
Nice. We can go back to the SoundCloud experience. Do you remember some of the challenges you have faced? Was it a remote job or?
No, it wasn't presential. So I moved to Berlin with my family. Yeah, so I like programming languages, but I have trouble with natural languages. I can express myself in English today, but learning English was really challenging for me. And at SoundCloud, I was going to work for the first time in English, right? So I think you maybe can empathize with that. It's
I can.
hard. Like the first time, it's like really difficult, right? And the week before my move to Germany and starting to work, I had a health issue. I had a partial facial paralysis. It's called Bell's palsy. So basically, the right side of my face just like completely stopped working. I couldn't move any muscles. So imagine, like, I was going to a new country, like no people I don't know, new culture, and starting to work in English with my right side of the face like not moving, right? So it was many times like I considered like giving up, like, okay, let's just go back to Brazil, go back to my family, go back to what I know, right? But I had this dream, like to really build something different, like be able to learn from these large scale systems, learn from different technologies, different people with different experiences. So I couldn't really let it go. So I continued, like, even throughout the difficulty, to start working and communicating with people in English and etc. And I'm happy that I did that. It wasn't easy, to be honest, at all. But yeah, it's what defined like the career I have today, I would say, right? So yeah, I think that was one of the main challenges, the main challenge when I went to Berlin in Germany.
Yeah, especially about the health. I can imagine it's very difficult. Do you find support? Like, did you need support at that time in Germany, or you needed to solve it in Brazil before you go?
So the condition is something that is not well known. There isn't like many treatments and etc. So there was like a default treatment. So there wasn't much I could do in Brazil. So I went to Berlin, regardless. And in Berlin, I had a lot of support from the company. My manager at the time supported me a lot. The people team also supported me a lot. So SoundCloud was had this thing with like bringing people through like the world, like people coming from all over the place, and then providing support to them, and that was really key for me, and also support from my family, right? So my wife and my son went with me
Yeah.
later, and supporting from them. It was good to have all those people interested in helping me, supporting me. So yeah, that helps a lot as well.
Yeah, it's very important and it's very nice to be in a good environment at work and have like this culture.
Yeah.
And how long did you work there?
I worked at SoundCloud, I think for about 2 years, maybe.
Mm,
Yeah. At SoundCloud, initially, the company had a big problem with a monolithic Ruby Rails base. So that was how the company grew, as a monolithic Ruby Rails system. And it wasn't able to keep up with the load at all. So I think there is like different factors. The technology itself has some trouble to deal with scale, Ruby on Rails. But at the same time, like the way that the system evolved wasn't ideal as well.
mm,
So the company had this trouble, and initially when I joined, they had an approach where they would migrate to any language, so building microservices on any language. So we had like Clojure, Haskell, Scala, like all in the same company. And that wasn't working well because there was like no common functionality across the systems for observability, for things that are basic for operating systems. And when I joined, started the migration to microservices in Scala. So that became the main language there. And I worked on the base libraries, the base systems. I think my time at SoundCloud was the most productive so far in my professional life because of the needs of like rebuilding this monolith.
yeah.
We basically like started rewriting lots of systems really quickly. Like in a month, we would like rewrite two major parts of the platform, like in Scala, and it was really fast pacing. And I had a good friend working with me, a Brazilian as well, and we would just like code and like make things happen. And it was really a great opportunity for me to learn and like build more things.
I can imagine having like this challenge to work together to build something, and all of you have the similar vision to make it happen. It helps a lot. And then, how did you decide to move to a different job? And did you stay in Germany or?
Yeah, so I was in Germany. Actually, so things went well at work, we adapted, but at the same time, my family wasn't really adapting well to Germany. So we were thinking about leaving, and at the time, SoundCloud was using Finagle, that is a library by Twitter.
Yeah.
So I started interacting with them, doing some open source work with Finagle and etc. And because of that, they invited me to do the interview with Twitter. It was a very stressful process because going to the US, the visa question is really difficult, right? So
Yeah.
you have a lot of process, like really stressful interviews, and like it's not easy. And I was fortunate to be selected by the H-1B lottery. So I could not be selected, right? So I got it. So yeah, that's how I went to the US, San Francisco Bay Area, and it's been where I am up to this day.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's how I ended up at Twitter then later.
Interesting. And like, how was your experience there?
So when I went to Twitter, it was like really fascinating to see how like pretty large scale systems work and like the kind of problems those systems have. Like it was a really great experience. Like I met people really bright and that taught me a lot. Like I learned so much about the systems, the problems, and like being able to collaborate with people that were like, wow, it's people that were really references to me. So yeah, it was a really great experience. Even at SoundCloud, I had like this interesting performance work. I like to learn new things. So when I feel that I'm not learning or like doing something different, it becomes like a bit difficult for me. So at Twitter, being a big company, I was able to change teams a few times. So initially I was working in the tweet service, and then I went to a completely different area that was big data libraries. So like jobs in Hadoop and etc. Twitter has like its own library called Scalding for defining jobs. At least had, I don't know how things are today. So, and working on big data was very interesting because it was like a completely new domain. I didn't know anything. So like, okay, let's go again, learn from the basics, start like building and etc. It was really nice to be able to do that. And then later, because of this focus on performance, I always had like this context with the Java virtual machine, the JVM, and I wanted to learn it like deeper, right? So understand how things really work internally. And then eventually I changed teams again to work on the JVM team at Twitter. I think the people that were in the JVM team at Twitter, they are just like the people who created like the major garbage collectors of the JVM, like
Wow.
are really like people that are references in the field. So I learned so much from them. Like it was a really good opportunity. And at that time, like performance became more of a focus for me. So in the JVM team, I was basically working on performance optimizations, production issues related to performance. So performance became more of like my main role at that point.
Nice. And like changing from different teams, this having like that opportunity to also always keep learning, keep growing in different areas, and you don't get bored, and it gives you more like the motivation that every day you have new challenges, etc. Yeah, it's a really good opportunity. And do you remember some of the challenges you have faced there?
So sometimes like corporate environments are difficult, right? So you have lots of politics, lots of like things that happen that are difficult to understand. So in working on performance, it's a bit challenging domain. People really need you when they need you, but not necessarily when they don't need you, right? So it's hard to raise an awareness and have the credit for your work sometimes in performance. I faced some of that. So even though I was able to deliver like major optimizations for Twitter, sometimes like doing things or like being able to influence technical decisions was not so easy for me. So I would say that was something that was a bit challenging. But at the same time, I started learning more about those things, how I can improve and be a better engineer, be able to talk about my work, be able to show my work, and etc. It was something that I didn't bother much before.
Are you for promoting your work? You make it visible better than say nothing and feel like they are not seeing your value?
Yeah, so I would say I wasn't pretty successful at that at Twitter because I don't know, I couldn't see it as something that was interesting to me. So I just like kept pushing, not like really working on that. But eventually I started like focusing on that and trying to document my work and like show the results and etc. I think even if it's something that feels like, okay, why are you like trying to promote yourself? Like that's not something nice to do or something like that. But it's important because how can people know what you're doing and the value of what you're doing if you are not talking about it, right? So yeah, I started structuring more my projects and like producing documents and etc. And that helps a bit. And later, when I joined the company I'm in now, I started doing more of that as well. And I saw how that can be also a good way of helping other people to understand problems, to see problems from different perspectives. So I started valuing more like writing about my work and I do this new job.
I agree. I find that it's important to like to document things and also to promote your work, etc. Because at the end, other people will learn from you, and also maybe they will discover other things and they will do the same. It becomes like a culture, and that will value each individual. I think it's also nice to do an effort, to do a presentation, to do a demonstration. Maybe they even didn't know that, because sometimes people see mostly the front and they see only pictures. They don't know even what's going on, what are the processes that make things work. And I really encourage that, also raise awareness about how things work, and also about your effort. And
Yeah. And for me, that was a learning curve. So because I'm a shy person, so promoting myself, it's hard for me, right? So, but at the same time, as you said, like being able to influence people, like help them see different things. I think when I saw that happening, especially in my more recent job, then I saw, okay, no, this is something that actually has a value. It's something that makes sense to do, right?
yeah. Since when did you start to give talks in tech conferences?
Yeah, conferences, I've always given talks at conferences since like my times in Brazil. So that's something I like to do. But more because of the technical aspect. So being able to talk about more technical things and like being able to talk to other people about those problems and solutions was something that I always enjoyed to do. So yeah, it's something I've been doing for many years. I think what changed for me was my more like writing documentation about my work, like trying to provide like better understanding of the things I'm doing, the results of the work. That's something more recent, I would say. But giving talks is something I've been doing for a long time.
It's really great that you are doing that. And the beginning of that, was it like your own decision? You say, okay, I will apply to a conference or meetup, or was it like some like community who inspired you? Or
So when I started giving talks, I was working in Brazil at this company that I worked with small talk and etc. And there was a person that was really inspiring to me. His name is Klaus Fulstfeld, and he built like something that was really interesting, like a few innovations in software development, and he was like a reference for me, right? So seeing him like giving talks and like the way he was able to talk to other people and exchange ideas and experiences inspired me to start giving talks as well. If I'm not mistaken, my first talk was with him as well. So that's something I spoke about at the beginning of our session, right? So finding people that you can have inspiration from and like can learn from was also something really important for me to start giving talks.
definitely, because also like when you are around these people, they inspire you to do more and to make progress in your career.
Yeah.
And after Twitter, how did you progress on your job?
So I was always looking at the tech scene in Brazil because I'm Brazilian, right? So I was observing this company. It's a fintech called Nubank. That they were like a small startup, and their idea was to build something that would compete with the large banks. And in Brazil, the large banks, they have so much power. Like at the time when they started doing that, I think almost no one would say, okay, they are going to be successful because the big banks are going to just crush them, right? And that wasn't the case. Like I started seeing the company growing and growing and growing and growing. And it was like, wow, that's so amazing. Like a Brazilian company, Brazilian people building something so big, so amazing, the tech scene, right? So I was really impressed by the company, but I didn't think I could work for them because like I was in the US, the company is in Brazil and etc. But to my surprise, later someone from the company reached out to me and said, okay, do you want to come work with us? I was like, okay, if that works, yes, sure. Like I'm very interested. And it worked out. Like I was able to join the company. And it's nice to be working with like American people, Brazilian people as well. So because I can walk like the different cultures both American and Brazilian. So it's been a really great experience. I joined the company as a performance engineer. So there was no performance team at the company, and they were growing like really fast and having scaling issues. So I joined to help form this performance team, the systems performance team at the company, and it's been like was an amazing opportunity because when I joined and the team started, I started with this person who invited me to do the interviews. He was like the engineer with me starting this new team. And he became like a good friend, like someone that I admire a lot as well. And we built something that was like the company was having outages almost every month, like major outages. And it was really hard to see a path to solve those issues. And we decided to build something new, like an innovation to solve that problem. It was a really risky move, right? So I
Mhm.
was just joining a new company. I'm going to build something no one has ever built, like an innovation. Should I really do that? But at the time, I couldn't see like a better path to solve the issues we were having. And we started just like, okay, let's build it. And I'm really grateful to the person who invited me to work there, his plan, and to work with him like on this project because we just like started coding like and trying to solve all the issues that came in our way to really deliver the projects, and we were successful. Like we were able to deliver the solution to an adaptive way of like sizing the number of threads in applications. It's something very low level, but it's a way that no one does, and it works really well, and it solves the instability that we were having. So yeah, it's been a really great ride. But like I said, I like to change teams. So I helped just farm the performance team at Nubank, and we delivered this project, some other projects, and I'm now moving to a new team to work on a new area. So I'm working on solutions on top of large language models now. It just started a couple of weeks before recently.
Ah, that's really interesting. And you are using different programming languages, or did you stay with
So
Scala?
actually, Clojure is Nubank is a Clojure shop. So
Hmm.
Nubank actually bought Cognitex, that is the company that is behind Clojure and a database
Hmm.
called Datomic as well. So it's mostly a Clojure shop at Nubank. Um, in the performance team, I did some Clojure, but mostly Java because the solution with the adaptive threading
Hmm.
model was something more generic for the JVM. So we didn't want to make it in Clojure. So we implemented it in Java. So it was a bit of Java and a bit of Clojure in the performance team. And now for my new team, I'm not sure yet, but I've been exploring using Scala, and it seems promising because Scala has some features that you don't see in other languages. For example, to be able to reflect on, to do meta programming on codes, and to be able to provide more higher level abstractions for people to make things simpler. And the domain of large language models is very dominated by Python
Hmm.
nowadays. And the libraries are, I would say, relatively simple. It's just like a simple interaction. Okay, make a request to the large language model, get the results. There isn't like much abstraction on those libraries. So I've been exploring some abstraction, some more advanced solutions in Scala.
How did you learn the new language? Is it like just by checking up the project and try to figure out, or you needed to see some
Mm.
courses and?
I've never been a good student, so I don't like courses or like formal learning environments. So I learn more by experience and by example. So I, for
Mhm.
example, when I'm learning something new, I like to look at existing codes, debug the codes, try to understand how things are executing. So, and writing some code to see how things behave. So that's my approach to learning. But I think each person has a different approach to learning. So
Yes.
uh, I think it's important to understand like what works best for yourself, and like try to find like ways of improving on that, right? So how to learn.
Yeah.
Mm.
And this is your current job, right?
Yes. Mhm.
And what are your challenges now?
So I think the large language model area is really a greenfield.
Mhm.
So there's so much happening so fast. So for example, if we build a solution today and write a project and invest in the project, eventually in a month, that's going to become deprecated, right? Because the market is advancing like in a really, really fast pace. So in that sense, it's really challenging to build things. But I think this area of like building better abstractions for dealing with large language models is something that seems promising to work on. I think that's one important challenge. I think other challenges like being in a new team, in a new environment, like building the relationships and etc. That's always like a work you have to do, and make sure you do well. So that's something that is important for me to make right. Right. Yeah, I think these are like the main challenges at the moment.
Mhm. And do you manage to find time with your work with open source projects?
So I used to do open source for many years, and eventually I stopped doing because of problems with the community, and like I would like release projects and people would be like have really harsh feedback, like even implying like things that were not very nice. So I eventually stopped doing open source because of that. And it became like of a something missing in my life because it was my passion, like my hobby, and I didn't have that anymore. But I started doing a project a couple years back, my free time, and I've been working on this for a long time and like exploring so many things. It's so nice because I have the freedom, for example, to write something, delete everything, and then start from
Yeah.
scratch again. I did that like many times because there's no one like waiting for me to deliver something. So it's been like a really nice way of exploring. There is like a few things that always bothered me in the solutions that we have today in Scala, especially in terms of being something that's easy to use, that is more
Mhm.
accessible to people, more people being able to implement things in Scala. So that is one of the main focus of this new library. And the other focus is that is, I would say, if you look at my open source projects, it's normally about how can you build something that's easy to use, easy to understand, more accessible, but at the same time has good performance, right? So
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
an interesting twist, right? Because it's not easy. As you build more abstraction, it's easy to lose performance that way.
Mhm.
So, for example, Quill was in that direction, right? So Quill is a language integrated query library I created in Scala. It's one of the main libraries for database access. And when I wrote it, was like really this question: how can I provide a way of building queries that is more high level but with good performance? And the answer
Mhm.
was like, okay, maybe let's just compile the queries at compile time through metaprogramming and macros, and it works. So it's a library that's alive to this day, right? So and Kyo, that is this new library I've been working on. It's more of an effect system. It's similar to Zio, and it's very inspired by Zio as well.
Mhm.
I admire your work and John's work, like in the early days of Zio, because to me, the way Zio innovated in the effect system space was the main innovation in the space. Not only Scala, I would say in functional programming in general. So I have a lot of respect and admiration for that. And Kyo is more of a generalization of the mechanism in Zio. Maybe I'm getting too technical. I don't know if we should get so technical. But
It's okay. It's very
yeah,
interesting.
because Zio has like these two effect channels for short circuiting with the error handling, and then the
Yeah.
environments channel for like injecting dependencies. And that's amazing because it brings so much power to Zio. It's just like mind blowing, right?
Yeah.
And the way that Q works is by generalizing that. So instead of having these two parameters, like specific types of effects, Q allows you to define any type of effect, and it's based on algebraic effects, right? So
Mhm.
it's very convenient. It's like you can use an effect with another without much overheads, without like all the issues that you normally have like with tagless final or monad transformers. So it becomes very convenient to develop things. I'm also like trying to not use like category theory concepts or like symbolic operators to have something that's very easy for people to understand, right? It's not
Yeah.
complicated things that they have to understand or learn just to be able to code. Maybe behind the scenes, it's okay to use those concepts, but not
Mhm.
exposing that to users. Something that I feel is difficult as well is like all these symbolic operators.
Mhm.
For at least for me, I don't feel well like working with these operators. So just like having something that's like plain regular English, like that people can understand better, and also providing a way of using direct syntax that is like async await, but generalized to any effect, right? So not necessarily async, but
Mhm.
other effects as well. So that becomes much more convenient for people, newcomers, and also the car itself had like a lot of this work of like how can I build something high level that has good performance. So the car has like some characteristics that make it like have a performance that is like in a new level if compared to the current effect system. So I'm really
Mhm.
excited about that. I had like the issues with the community over the years, so I've been pushing like release the project for a while because of that. But yeah, I think I'm ready maybe to release the project soon. So let's
Mhm.
see. Um,
You are ambitious. You have a lot of ideas you put in open source, but when these challenges come on the way, the obstacles more than challenges, how did you cope with them to be able to continue to move forward?
so for a long time, like the early days, I published many libraries. I even lost count of how many libraries. And to me, it was really a hobby. So I would like develop something cool. Let's just share with
Yeah,
the people, right? So no pretense, like it's really to me as a hobby, as a way of exploring things. But then like the feedback would be like people implying like that I don't know what I'm doing, like, or I don't know like the basic of like things, like it's not nice, right? So for a long time I
yeah.
just ignored that. So up to Quill and etc. But then my last project was Monadless. It's a
Mm.
very interesting innovation, right? So I didn't think like was a perfect library without any issues or anything like that. But the mapping from direct style is like kind of async away to monadic transformations. It's a very interesting thing to do. Like
Yeah.
if you show that that mapping can be done, it's an interesting innovation in that space. But yeah, the feedback was so terrible. Like at that point, I thought, okay, I'm doing all of this for free as like a hobby. If it's not fun, okay, I'm gonna just stop. So for many years, I wasn't doing open source in Scala, but I'm doing it now again, like trying to,
Mm.
I don't know, let's see, like I want to publish the new project. But it's so, at the same time, it's so nice to just work by myself. No users
Yeah.
asking for fixes, no pull requests from people, no people complaining about like not solving their problems. It's just myself building something in code, right? So, but at the same time, it's nice to be able to share your work, to be able to influence directions of innovation in the community, in technology. So, yeah, I hope I will be able to publish the project and not deal with too many issues.
When I saw you presented some of your work, it is a good idea. When you see like there are people who are seeing that. And at the end, if some people think it will not help them to solve their problem, they don't need to comment on that. But
Exactly,
there are
they don't
people,
need to use it.
exactly, they don't need to use it. But there are people who appreciate your work because you are offering something that is accessible and make it easier for people to be to build programs with also high performance. You are offering a good solution, and
Mm.
there are people who can use that work, can be involved. But if they think that it's not useful or for them, I don't think it is useful also to put that comment or yeah.
I don't really have a problem with like using monads and etc. I don't have difficulty with that. It's just that I see in my career working with Scala, I've seen so many people struggling with that. So okay,
Yeah,
let's build a solution to help those people. I think that's a reasonable thing to do, right? So, but the
yeah,
feedback is like this this kind of solution shouldn't even be allowed to exist. That was like the feedback, right? So
yeah.
it's hard to continue if that's what you have to deal with, right?
It means that maybe you are building something that can influence people to use, so they will go towards your solution, and
Yeah,
it will make maybe yeah, it is maybe politic or something. Yeah.
yeah.
It could be. And to wrap up, I would like to ask if you have like an advice you would like to share with people, especially those who are starting their journey and are interested about your path.
Mhm. So thinking of my career and the challenges I faced over the years, I would say something, and it's something that when I mentor people at work, I normally try to communicate as well. That is, even though you can see like people that are really accomplished, like people that are references in the field or things like that, we are all figuring things out as we go.
Yeah.
No one has the perfect solutions for everything. No one has the knowledge to do everything. No one is really like just knows how to do everything. We are all figuring things out. So um, don't be afraid to share your thoughts. Don't be afraid to ask questions. find ways of collaborating with other people, find ways of helping other people with their ideas, find ways of working with people on your ideas. So sometimes like people think, okay, you have to be like kind of a genius to code like perfectly code without any bugs, and that's how you're going to be successful. That's not true at all. Like the people that I see that are successful are the ones that are able to take feedback and learn from it. It's like help other people to grow, like learn and express your ideas and explore your ideas and build things that sometimes might be risky as well. Taking risks, I think, is a lot of that as well. If you see people that are the most successful, maybe they are the ones that have the most failures because you have to really go after like building things, and that's how you become good at what you do, and that's how you learn how you build a good career, right? So it's something that I communicate to people. I normally mentor at work. So, and it's also something that helped me over time. Like, for example, when there was like a challenging situation or some problem, okay, no, let's just go ahead and like, let's try to build things. Let's try to learn from others. And that's been really good for me as a career path.
And I really found your journey is very inspiring. Thanks a lot for sharing about the different experiences. Thank you for your time. I'm very happy to talk to you. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rian. It was a nice talk. You're someone very easy to talk to, so I appreciate like how the conversation went well. Thank you.
I'm happy to hear that. Thank you too. Have a nice day.
Thank you. You too.
I'm looking forward to our next episode with a new guest and new inspiring story. Until then, stay safe and stay tuned to our next episode. Take Tech, tackle the inspiration.